Hi, everyone. I think we'll give folks a few more minutes to see if there are more people joining. But can you see my screen? The slideshow.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think we can start 4:35. Okay, so you can see my screen and feel free to turn your videos on or your audio. I'll be happier if it's more interactive. But anyway, just to give you a brief, one sec. To give you a brief overview about me, I have to keep admitting folks in, but yeah, so I was at CU a year back. I mean, 2 years back, 3 years back, but I graduated in 2020 when COVID really hit. And I was in the traditional master's in CS program. And also, I think I'm able to talk here is also because I do have quite some experience with both internships and full-time. I actually never really did any full-time interviews until COVID happened because I had a full-time offer from Uber. So I interned there. It was in the Uber Boulder office. And it's mainly that office has mostly all the maps teams. They had the autonomous group as well, but that they sold that off. But yeah, so I interned there. I'm currently at Amazon. I'm working full-time there. I'm at Amazon Go. It's an interesting story. My manager is the same manager I had at Uber, actually. And that story is actually, they posted something during COVID, and I was supposed to intern at Uber, but Uber rescinded all offers. And I then ended up interviewing for full-time in a span of like 1.5 months. And yeah, so that you can read that if you want. It's nothing great. But so anyway, I had internship offers from Uber, Amazon, PayPal, and AppNexus. The first three were all through applying online. And AppNexus, I actually got through the career fair in my first semester. The other three I ended up receiving in Feb or March, but I'll get to that, like applying and your timelines. My full-time offers were all last July, I think. Like I said, I didn't apply for any full-time jobs because I did want to join Uber at the time. So I had Amazon, Google Life Sciences is actually in Boulder, Bloomberg and eBay. So if you're applying to any of those companies or have questions about their process, I'll be happy to answer them. I just wanted to know, is everyone in the group just applying for internships or both internships and full-time? Okay, so it's a mix of both. Fine. So it looks like majority are internships and at least one person has said full-time. But anyway, I'm going to speak about both. I think at some point you're going to apply for full-time and it'll be helpful either way. So when should you apply? So for internships, ideally you should start now. And a lot of times, like I think we saw this with Google last year and the year before, they closed their internship positions pretty early. Like I think when I went to apply that year, they had already closed or something like that. So just be sure to apply for internship positions soon. Now you might think I'm not prepared, I'm going to wait. I'd say even if you're not prepared, just apply because you can always schedule your interview later. So you can tell your interviewer that you want to take some time to prepare and then apply. So what happened with me, just to back this up, I had an offer from Uber and then just 2 days before I was graduating, and I'm an international student, which means that I have to find a job 60 days within my OPT start date. So at least international students would understand what that really means. So Uber told me that they're assigning all new grad offers just 2 days before graduating, which meant that, and I had not prepared like for a year plus, like after internships. And after that, I had to start studying and start applying. And I obviously needed calls. So I immediately applied for jobs, like as soon as I got to know. So I literally had a call with Amazon, like immediately. I knew I was interviewing with Amazon the next day. I had other calls as well, but I was not prepared. Like if I had to interview within even 10 days, I'd not clear a single interview. But I scheduled all my interviews like 1.5 months almost later. So I told them, see, I'm not prepared. This happened and I need time to prepare. So you can let your recruiter know that you need some time. But and this is just for internships, what happens is they'll fill up, they have a fixed number of positions, they fill those up and then they will just close it. So it's in your best interest that you apply as soon as possible. And like, I think my boyfriend experienced this where he applied later and then he did not receive any calls. I, on the other hand, actually didn't apply. I didn't apply in my first semester and I was lucky enough to get a lot of calls in the second semester. But you're better off if you apply early. So just apply early. Yeah, so another thing is scheduling, how you schedule your interview. So I did this both with internships and full-time and I thought it was very helpful. So I prepared and then I scheduled all my interviews like in a span of 2 weeks, like all of my on-sites, for internships, you'll have 4 interviews generally, you rarely have like an on-site. So I scheduled it at around the same time so that not only did I have like time to prepare, I was just in that zone of giving interviews. And I think it worked out for me. I think it's good to schedule them closer together. Now, what I'd say also is if you have a lot of calls, say, and you know, okay, these are like, say, there are about 5 companies or 3 companies from there that you really want to get into, that those are your dream companies, or if you get that offer, you're definitely taking it. Don't schedule that interview first. It's very, very helpful to get some experience interviewing. It's very helpful to have like some interviews lined up that, okay, you know, if you don't get in, you don't really care. You're just giving it for practice. So if you can, like, apply, get those early on. So when I scheduled my full-time interviews, actually, I had some startups reach out to me, and I knew I was not going to take them for sure, irrespective whether I got them or not. So I scheduled them like very early on, like maybe, 20 days into like when I just, since my offer got rescinded, and I just gave them for practice. So you can do that. I mean, it's okay. Like, I don't think companies care that much when they want to like rescind offers. They care about themselves. So if you look out for yourself, it's okay. But yeah, so another thing for so schedule those interviews for the companies you're really keen on for later. The other thing is apply with referrals wherever possible. Ask your friends for referrals, ping alumni on LinkedIn. Just if you can apply with a referral, at least it's better. So yeah, I think if you apply with a referral, you're not, with Amazon, I've seen that it's not guaranteed. You could apply with a referral and still not get a call back. But I think Google, Facebook, you generally do get a call back. Like, I think they have to call you back, something like that. But anyway, just try to apply with referrals. It's better than applying just from the website. Career fairs are okay to some extent. I didn't find them that useful. I think I did attend the career fair during internships, and I had this offer from AppNexus, which was actually through the career fair. So they take your resume, you talk to some folks. When you talk to them, they are probably like taking notes, and if they find you interesting, they are going to call you back. But for the most part, I think applying online was what really helped me. All of my full-time was also, actually full-time was not online, it was LinkedIn. But anyway, so you should and you can message recruiters, managers on LinkedIn, but I'd say you take a more targeted approach. I know people that just keep messaging like recruiters and managers, 500 recruiters, managers. That may not be very wise to do. I mean, if you have that kind of time, great, but I think that time is better spent like actually preparing. But what I think you can do is, so there are lots of companies in Boulder, right? They generally prefer hiring from CU, and CU is the only like university there, and they can hire locally. They don't have to deal with relocation and all of that. So what you could do is find managers hiring in like the Boulder area. There are all the big companies are there. Amazon's there, Uber's there, Google's there. I think Facebook's in Denver. So find managers that are hiring for these companies and just ping them and tell them you're studying at CU, you're looking for a job. Like make your search more targeted. So I don't know. I don't think that it helps messaging like 500. I mean, sure, but if it's more targeted, it's yeah. The other thing is you could be applying for like new grad. You could be applying for SD1, SD2, ML roles. This is mostly for full-time. Internship, that's just generally, you could be applying for an ML internship. And I can talk more about my internship. It was kind of a ML engineer kind of role. But just also know that depending on the role you apply for, your process will be different. If you have 2 to 3 years of experience, try SD2 roles. This is for full-time again. If you're a new grad, like you've never worked before, then obviously SD1 new grad. And if you're really interested in ML, then apply for that. The first thing to do would be to get your resume ready. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'm sure most of you know it already. And I mean, at career fairs, they generally have sessions about this. And this is from Career Cup, but it's very important to have a good resume because generally that's like the first. Okay, I'll answer the question later. About the ML internship interviews, I'll speak to that later. But yeah, so get your resume ready early on. And it's very important that your resume is literally perfect because it is what is screened and generally it goes through their screeners and it's all automated. So they could just basically, if it's missing certain keywords, you could not get screened through. And so I know a lot of people who, like we all just, I think during internships just applied online, and many people didn't get callbacks, many people did get, and it was just random. It was based on, not random, but based on resume. Then people went and, redid their resumes. And so just be careful about that. ensure that, your if you have work experience, put that first over education, I would say, because that's what they kind of really care about. If you have like 2 years, 2 years of experience, do mention all your projects if you don't have experience. And GPA, if your GPA is on the higher side, definitely mention it. If not, you don't need to mention it. Cover letter. So some companies require it. I've never written a cover letter. And I remember Facebook, they told us, actually, don't write a cover letter. Don't waste your time. We don't read it. It's too much for us to read, and we don't have that much time. So they hardly spend any time even going through your resume. So, I mean, I didn't waste the time to write a cover letter, but you don't need to do it. I've not done it, and I don't know anyone amongst my friends that even wrote cover letters. And especially, I can at least talk to the big companies. They don't require it. So don't waste your time writing it. Smaller companies, it could be different, but again. So coming to interview prep. So this is what really, really helped me. And I don't know if all of you know it, but there's this book, Elements of Programming Interviews. So for internships, when I was giving internships, I took a very haphazard approach, and I was fortunate that it worked, but it wasn't ideal at all. And I know if I had to study in the same way that like I did for internships, I would have not gotten those full-time offers. But anyway, internships are that being said, internships are a lot easier than full-time. So this is a very good book to do algorithms, data structures in a very structured approach. So there's this book called Elements of Programming Interviews. It's much, much, much better than cracking the coding interview. It has like actual problems that have been asked. Like I was asked questions directly from this book, in fact, in my Google Life Sciences interview. And they also have this GitHub repository that you can clone. And basically, what you can do is look at the question, write your solution in this, run it, and you will be able to, it'll run your code against their test cases. So you would know basically whether it works or not, kind of like what LeetCode does, but you're coding this in your own editor. So this was very, very useful for me. I basically did all the chapters from this book. They have this honors section, which is tougher. So there are a lot of questions in this book, and it may be hard for you to like get through everything. So they have some study plan, like if you have, 4 weeks or a month or 3 months. So just look, this book is very nice. I loved it. I'd recommend it for anyone studying for interviews. And after that, obviously, keep practicing more on LeetCode. Just remember that it's not, I don't know, some people just think that solving a lot of problems is enough. But I think even if, like, to be very honest, I solved about 30 to 50 maybe for internships, but that was very haphazard. But for full-time, I solved about 120-ish to 150, I don't remember. But it's more about the types of problems you solve than just number of problems. So try to approach it slightly in a more targeted manner than just randomly. I'd say like identify patterns, then solve similar problems in that. So say, you're doing some sliding window problem. So identify a number of problems in that. So once you understand the approach, the main thing in an interview I found is to recognize what kind of problem, to identify, okay, this is a sliding window problem, then solve it. That's been very helpful. So just don't randomly solve it in like maybe data structure wise, pattern wise. There are different patterns for problems. So do that. If you're giving any SD2 interviews, they will definitely have a system design round. So there's this book, Designing Data Intensive Applications. It's a big book. You might not have time now, but again, it's a good book to like keep reading through, I guess. I didn't do it, by the way, but it's something I want to get to now that I have more time. But I did use this, Crocking the System Design Interview. That was very helpful, but the thing is, it's slightly on the surface. What I found is in system design interviews, they tend to dive very deep. So you just can't say, oh, I'm going to use this kind of like I'm going to use HDFS for, my data set management or something. They're going to dive a lot deeper into that. Like, so you have to know the details, which is harder. So it's better to like talk about something or give an approach you really, really know and you understand that technology. So just throwing names around or throwing doesn't work generally, but that's only for the senior roles. And that's like, I think Amazon's SD2, they have some sort of system design. I don't think it's even like asking you to design WhatsApp or Instagram or Twitter or something like that. And I know Google's SD2, which is their L4 position. They don't ask system design. It's purely technical. It's like 3 technical interviews. So for Google, you don't have to worry too much about system design. And Amazon's also is like, I think more object oriented and less really system design. It's easier. So again, for full-time, they have leadership HR rounds. And that's mainly for full-time. Internship, it'll be pretty easy. You don't need to worry too much about it. Amazon focuses very, very heavily on leadership. If you prepare for Amazon's leadership, you're set for any other behavioral rounds that other companies would have. But they will have leadership in every single interview. Like all your technical interviews, they will have that. They spend 20 minutes on that and then give you 20 minutes to code, which makes like you have to find a solution very quickly. So it's annoying, but I don't know why they do it, but they do it. They really do value those leadership principles. Once you join, you will see. But yeah, and I think after practicing, the other important thing is to like keep revising. Once you've solved 50 problems, a lot of them, if you've got to the solutions to all of them on your own without taking any, without actually looking, then fine, then you're set, then interview. But if not, if you've looked, you will want to revise. So please do revise. And try to do some mock interviews with friends. You interview your friend, ask your friend to interview you back. That's helpful. Or always just apply to companies that you're not so keen on and interview there for practice. Yeah, don't start 2 weeks prior to your interview. Just ensure that you're like studying now. What I would say is like, try to do at least, I know it's difficult with having classes and you're in your first sem, you're settling down, but try to spend like an hour at least every day practicing, and that'll help you a lot for full time, which is honestly the most important. Internship still okay, like, but you in the end, like, think of internship as your it's like a stepping stone to your final destination, which is full time. So just target internship also with that in mind. So also after you get your internship, if it's a company, okay, you want to join for full time, then fine, don't continue preparing, but otherwise it'd be best to prepare. So now let's say you've gotten a call back. So there are a few things that you should definitely ask your recruiter. First thing, it's very important to know what role you're applying for. Again, this applies for full time. So generally, there's this confusion sometimes. They looked at your experience, they've decided a role for you. You think you're applying for some other role. I've seen this happen. It actually happened with my boyfriend. So just be careful, ensure that you know what, if they tell you a level, just, try to find out what that level is. Like L5 at Amazon and L5 at Google are different things. So, just ensure you know exactly what level you're applying for, because that also decides the expectations the interviewers have from you. They might ask you similar questions, but the expectations that they'll have from an SD1 and an SD2 is different. Like an SD2 would be expected to write reusable code. They'd be expected to like really write very clean code. They will look at everything, like the way you name your variables and all of that. So just ensure that you know what role you're applying to, you're interviewing for. And it may not be clear. I think like it depends if a recruiter reaches out to you. If you're applying online, maybe, but yeah, just clarify that. Then ask your recruiter what different rounds would be there. That would basically, whether there's a system design round, there's behavioral round. So yeah, just find that out. Schedule all your interviews around the same time. That I already mentioned that. And Yeah, depending on the company, you could be interviewing for one particular team, or you would be matched with a team later on. So it depends. If you apply to Amazon new grad, then you're in this pool of this is full-time again. You're in this whole pool of people which will then get matched later on. If you apply for Amazon's SD1 lateral position, you could be applying to a team. So you know at the start what you're getting into. On Google, I think you apply for anything generally. It's more like you're going to be matched later on. I don't know. They do have positions, I think, for a team, but for the most part, you're going to get matched with a team later on. So just new grad, it's always you're in this pool and then you'll be matched and you find out a few months prior, but if you're interviewing with a team, so just check that. Just it's something you can ask your recruiter. Okay, any questions from all of you? I mean, you can turn your audio on and ask, and we can then, if not, then I can proceed. But so far, any questions? The ML internship interviews. So I can answer that. Generally, I think in the ML internship interviews, they will ask you a lot of basics of machine learning, mostly stuff you've done in your ML course. My role was ML, but it was ML engineer. I did give a software engineering interview for Uber. It wasn't, and just the team ended up being like a ML team. But generally it's like, depending, you could have like computer vision questions, but mostly like basic fundamental machine learning questions. No, system design questions are not asked in SD internship interviews. So I will get to that actually in the next slide here when I talk about internships versus full-time. But yeah, you don't have to do system design for internship. Even for full-time, you may get by without having to do system design, but you really, really need to do algorithms, data structures. And I'll talk more to that like when in the next few slides. Any other questions? Yeah, it is. For internships, honestly, like you just do EPI, I feel you'll be fine. Okay. Okay, so next, I mean, I have this prepping for the interview slide here and even after. So you obviously have to start preparing before you've gotten a call. And once you've gotten a call, continue that prep. But anyway, here I'm just talking to the kind of like questions. So majority of your, okay, there's a question on topics highly recommend for internship interviews. I have a slide for that too. I'll get to that in a few minutes. But anyway, so data structures and algorithms is like super, super, super important. And I cannot really stress how important that is. All your phone screens, your on-sites, they're all going to have that, and a major chunk of that. Unless someone here is applying for a manager position, I'm assuming most of you are applying for SD positions. Even if you're applying for an ML position, they're going to ask you data structures, algorithms. So that's super important. You will almost always have to speak to the time and space complexity. So please understand that super well. Unit test code quality comments, it's not super important for internships. Like obviously when they're hiring an intern, they expect that this person has not had really prior work experience. I don't know about all of you here, but at least my batch, a lot of us had prior work experience. So they don't expect you to like, really write great quality code, and their bar is much lower for internships as expected. But for full-time, it'll be very useful to, write maybe a unit test, speak. You don't have to like write a unit test, like actually import like the unit test framework and all of that. But you can at least just show that, okay, if you test, write a test that's calling your function, and then you can just add an assert statement, something very basic and fundamental to show that, okay, you are the kind of person that will test the code you write. That's what they're looking for. they do care a lot about your code quality, how you're naming your variables. If you are asked a certain question and you just name your variables like as X, Y, Z, or something like some single letter, then that's not going to bode well. Generally, like, don't add comments for every single thing. It's basic. Like if it's self-explanatory, you don't need to add a comment. But if it's something hard or you're splitting your code into like smaller blocks, just add a comment on top. But if you work, most of you will already know this, but try to do this even when you're practicing. Like every time you are writing code, try to follow these things so that when you're interviewing, it comes very naturally to you. But yeah, this code quality comments is really important for full-time internships. I wouldn't worry that much. I mean, it's very impressive if you do it. Like they would be very happy seeing that. System design again is just for full-time, and that also certain SD2 roles, like depending on the company. Just talk to your interviewer and ask, or your recruiter and ask them about that. Those are more like very open-ended, like design, Twitter, Instagram, and you'll find like these sorts of questions on grokking the system design interview. I've linked that here. Yeah, so, but like this grokking the system design interview is it's very high level. They don't really dive that deep. And in these interviews, they tend to go extremely deep. And they are generally for senior positions. Like when I say senior, I mean like L6, like SD3 kind of positions. But designing or data intensive applications will speak about all these technologies at a much lower level. So like that's a good book to really understand design properly and give better solutions. So if you have time, and you should go through that book. So object-oriented design is common in Amazon interviews. They tend to ask this, and it's like they're looking at how you design your classes, how you're thinking of hierarchy, basically inheritance and all of that. So I think like some questions are like design classes for chess, design class for an in-memory file system, something of that sort, design a library or something, a parking lot, something like that. So there's no other company that I've seen that has asked this except Amazon, and they have like one round for this. But yeah. Leadership, again, I mentioned already, super important for full-time, and especially Amazon. They care so much about that leadership. I spent so much time preparing for that, and it's big pain, but very important. If you mess that up, and even if you've done extremely well in all your technical interviews, you could get rejected. So that's important. There are a number of videos online for Amazon leadership principles, and I haven't linked them here, but I can point you to those. But yeah, just practice that. Ask a friend to ask you a few questions, practice your answers. You have to speak very quickly and to the point, because again, I mentioned for Amazon, what they do is in every interview, they are going to spend the first 15 to 20 minutes asking you this. And if they don't get the expected answer, they're going to repeat the question. They're saying, we're asking you for this, and what's your opinion? Like, give us an example that speaks to this leadership principle. And if your answer doesn't match, they keep re-questioning, and you're just wasting, like, that time is being spent in leadership, and your time for actually coding is reducing, and then that's a problem. So it's very important for you to manage that time. And later you can't just say that, oh, the interviewer kept asking me about leadership principles and I didn't have time to code. They're just going to blame that on you, and it's really not ideal, but it is what it is, I guess. So I have this slide here for internships versus full-time. So internships, you'll generally have 2-4 interviews, just data structures, algorithms. Lead code level is like easy to medium. I don't know anyone that I've not been asked any hard question during internships, and your offer is generally non-negotiable. So you can, at least, again, I've not interviewed with too many small companies, but most offers I've seen weren't, you couldn't negotiate your internship offer. That could be different depending on the size of the company, but you can check. Full-time, you're going to have like an initial code screening, which is basically like a hacker rank or something like that. And based on that, that's after they screen your resume, obviously. So it also, you could also have recruiters reach out to you, in which case you directly have a phone interview, code screening. Depending on the company, they might have a phone interview, or Amazon has a code screening, Google has a phone interview, Bloomberg has a phone interview, so it depends. Generally, you have about, then after you clear that, then you go move on to on-site. So obviously, this last year we had only virtual on-sites, but your on-sites they're still called on-sites, although they're virtual. They're not flying you to the office or anything like that. But you would have 4 or 5 rounds of interviews on that day, back to back. You would get like maybe 5. I don't think you get 5. Yeah, I don't remember getting even 5 minutes between interviews, but I think after 2, like generally you'd go for lunch if you were at the office location. So here they'll give you like half an hour for lunch between 2 interviews, something like that. But for the most part, you would have all your interviews on one day. Again, depends on the company, but like Amazon, Google, you had all interviews on one day. It does include all the technical interviews, the design, if it's depending on the role, and behavioral. Lead code is medium to hard. I don't think I've seen an easy question, but it's medium to hard. It's important to ensure that your code quality meets a certain standard, and your offer is definitely negotiable, and you should negotiate. Any questions here? So someone has a question which says, what usually happens in phone interviews? So phone interviews, they're going to basically give you a problem to solve. So they will share this code, this link with you. You will have to go onto it. They can see whatever you're typing into that. And most companies don't ask you to run your code. It depends. But for the most part, they will not tell you to run it. Bloomberg had asked me to run it, which is nice, because if you run it, you kind of know, okay, this definitely works, and you're not thinking left back thinking, or does this actually work? Google asks you to type in Google Docs, which is a pain, but just practice that if you're interviewing with Google, and it's tricky, but ensure that you have your formatting all set, like your font size, your font type, tab, auto tab, or something like that, so that you can at least type easier, but you don't have any syntax highlighting, none of that in Google Docs. But the others like Amazon, Bloomberg, at least most companies do have like a decent interface, so you at least feel you're typing in your code editor. But they're just going to paste a question in that editor, and then you have to type the solution there. So another thing to note is, now with these phone interviews and virtual interviews, while you're typing questions, right? But sorry, while you're typing the solution, ensure that you're talking the whole time. Like, don't stay quiet. Everything you're typing, please talk to them about your thought process. Like, you don't have a whiteboard now, so it's difficult. So just practice this one thing prior. Like, it's very important to be talking them through your solution. Whatever you're thinking, think out loud. Don't just keep typing while you're thinking in your mind. And some of you may not be used to that. So just that's one thing to practice, because they really care about what your thought process is. I mean, obviously it matters that your code is, but even if you thought the right thing and you made a few mistakes here and there, there's a good chance you will clear that interview. So don't worry about like getting everything so perfect, because for the most part, you may not be running it. Like, you're allowed to even ask them, okay, I don't remember this. I have done this in interviews. I've said, I don't really remember this method. And they'll say, okay, that's fine. Just, write this and it's okay. We'll assume that, because you have access to that method. When you're actually coding in Office, you have access to Google. So what really matters is how you think and how you're approaching the solution, whether you're on the right track. A lot of times if you're heading in the wrong direction, they will give you hints. Take those hints. They are really helping you. They're trying to guide you. If you maybe, deviate in this sense, okay, this person's going off track, and they've then asked you a question, don't dismiss them. They are really helping you, and they want you to clear the interview. Always think of the interviewer as your best friend or as a friend. It helps. But yeah, so that's 4 interviews. That's what's going to happen. Your on-sites are just going to be similar, except you can see your interviewer. But 4 interviews, like internships, we had 4 interviews. They'll call you and they'll paste that question and you have to type the solution, and the same thing is going to happen in your virtual on-sites, except you can see them. Any more questions here? Okay, so these are some favorite topics just based on all my interviews that I've given, especially for full-time. Internship, I mean, I didn't have a big subset. It was like 2 questions per company. But for full-time, I did give a lot, including like the phone screens and then the on-sites. So recursion is like a big favorite. I don't know. I mean, I see why, but it's, I don't know. I think every single on-site I had recursion without a doubt. Arrays is another favorite. Trees, of course, heaps, graphs. And I know this almost looks like it covers everything, but that's how it is. Dynamic programming, I don't know if you've heard this, and Google says they don't ask dynamic programming, or if you've heard that, that's not true. They ask, and it again depends on the interviewer. If the interviewer wants to ask you dynamic programming, they're going to ask you. But most dynamic programming questions you can solve with recursion. So it's up to you. But I mean, if you are better, you like recursion more, then just solve it using recursion and memoization and you'll be fine. But I have seen some common DP questions, like I was asked that in my Google phone screen. Yeah, so a lot of focus is on like data structures and lesser on algorithms, but like binary search, all of that's super important, and there's a good chance you may get that. But yeah, again, this is not exhaustive, and I would not recommend just solving these topics. You should really solve everything that there is to solve. But yeah, these seem to be favorites. Like I've definitely always been asked recursion, and I used to not like it that much, but I was asked it so often that I actually began to like it. Yeah. So any questions on this? Okay. So now let's say you've gotten your offer. It's very important to negotiate, and I am by no means an expert in negotiating. In fact, I hate it. But it's a very useful skill to have. And at least the one thing you can do is just do not accept the first offer you get, or when they tell you don't sound too, it's nice that you're happy about receiving an offer, but just don't take the first number they give you. Like, don't make that mistake. This is again for full time. They will generally ask you, what are you expecting? What do you want? Don't give out a number. You tell them what is your range. Ask them what they are in, and generally they have a band. Like for L4s, they would have a band, like say from like maybe 120 to 140. Again, depending on location, that would differ. And obviously, if you have multiple offers, that's the best way to negotiate. You just have to tell them, see, I have this offer. They will definitely, depending on the company, again, if they can, they will match that number. If they refuse to match, there's just no way they can. So most times you can, every single time I have been able to negotiate, they are always unwilling to negotiate your base pay like by a lot, but they'll tell you that, we'll increase your bonus, by 10K, and you'll just be happy, maybe happy, I don't know, hearing that. And then I think I'd done that with my Uber offer when they told me that we'll increase your bonus by 10,000, and I was very happy. And then I realized that in the end, my increments are on my base pay, and my yearly annual bonus is also on my base pay, but I just took this one-time payment that I'm getting, my sign-on bonus, and was happy with it. And that was also my return offer. But after that, I never would accept like just increasing my sign-on. So always tell them to increase your base pay, and you can check levels.fyi and Blind to compare salaries. To be on Blind, you need to have like a company email ID. I think you can do it with CU. I'm not sure. But yeah, if you work prior, you can definitely use. But I don't know. You should see how to sign up on Blind. I'm not so sure. I signed up with my Uber account, but so yeah. This is just some general stuff. These are companies local to Boulder. There are many companies. These are the ones that I know of, and there are again many more. Uber has maps and freight in their Louisville office. They used to have ATG, not anymore. The Amazon office has ads. Go is actually a new team, and it's my team. And it's basically because there was this computer vision team at Uber that moved to Amazon. There is the robotics team is here. It's a lot of folks from Uber ATG moved to this robotics team. It's very interesting, actually. They were called Canvas initially, and they got acquired by Amazon. So that's in Louisville again. Ads is in Boulder, Pearl Street. Google has their life sciences Verily team, and I think they have other CV teams, not sure. Twitter is also there. I don't know what teams they have. Splunk is actually there. I don't know if you all know about this, but Professor Gregory, he takes a big data class, and he actually works at Splunk. He's at a very high level, director or something like that. But yeah, there are many other companies. And so it's very good to, because these companies would ideally like to hire locally. So if you approach managers, they'd be happy to like talk to you or just, yeah, take advantage of that. Like it's nice that basically there are all these companies and CU is the only big university. We don't have that much competition. So yeah, so any questions? Feel free to turn your audio on and just ask instead of typing. So I'm guessing you don't have any questions. Anyway, so all the best. This process can be very frustrating in general, like at least I found it frustrating. Preparing is annoying sometimes. Getting rejections can be disappointing and stressful, but in the end, it's extremely, extremely rewarding. Like you will think, at least that's what I felt, that after my Uber offer got decided, like that 1 month when after graduating, when I should have been like relaxing, I was studying almost 7 to 8 hours a day. And it was extremely frustrating. Like I was obviously scared, I was tensed, but at the end of it, it was very rewarding. Like having multiple offers, being able to negotiate was like, I kept thinking all I did was like really do lead code and API, and I'm in this position now. But yeah, it's rewarding but very frustrating, and it's just something you have to deal with, I guess. But yeah, if you want to reach me, this is my LinkedIn and my email. I will send these slides to Rajshri, and if you need it, I don't know what's her plan, but yeah. So someone's asked me, I'm in a computer vision team in Amazon. So I'm at Amazon Go, and my team is like the ML training machine, the training team. So a lot of what we're doing is we have these research tracks in Amazon. Like obviously we have a number of models running in the store to detect your action, to detect the items, to track your movement in the store. So I'm not working on those models, but what we are working on is building like a training platform. And most of it revolves around like really optimizing this training process and like introduce, for instance, one of the things we worked on is introducing distributed training so that we can train very quickly, because as we bring up new stores, we generally have like different store formats. We have to quickly retrain these models, and there are so many models. So basically optimizing that process, bringing costs down, and as much as we can, and improving training time, like improving performance. So that's what I worked on in Amazon. It's a lot of like engineering only, it's not research-ish. But at Uber, in fact, I did a bit of a research role. I was working on depth estimation. Basically, it's to estimate the distance between your camera center to your object. So I was working on that for one of their jump bikes, basically. And that was like using deep learning methods and using ResNet models to estimate that. So some supervised learning techniques, something like that. And like also using structure from motion and getting additional information from there. So That was what I worked on at Uber.
Hi, Abigail.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question. In the internship interviews, like how deep will they go for the core subjects like operating systems and networks and DBMS? Like how should we look at before the interview, the last minutes before that? Do you have any resources for that? Yeah, thank you.
So are you talking about SD positions? Like, is this a software and development engineer internship position or a different position?
Software engineer internship question.
So I have never been asked an operating system question or a networking question, and I'm definitely not prepared really for it. Staying operating systems, I'll be able to answer OS, but I definitely did not prepare for it.
Thank
So
you.
they don't generally ask you, but again, like you've seen my the companies I have experience with. So again, I'm not super experienced with like very these are mostly all the big companies which have very similar type of interviews and on sites, and their process is very similar. So I don't have that much, and I interviewed with AppNexus and it was slightly different actually. Their internship, most of it was algorithms itself, but actually there I remember it was front end. I think it was a front end position, and they asked me front end questions, and they asked me about like REST services and microservice architecture. So what I think is that the smaller companies, depending on the position they're hiring you for, your interview could differ, but the bigger companies like all of these, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, Quora, Uber, Lyft, all these companies have the same process. I think again, Apple is different. Like if you apply for a front end position, they will ask you front end questions. So that's why it's very important to talk to your recruiter. So that's another thing. So when I lost, my Uber offer got rescinded, I had to prepare for full-time interviews, and I obviously wanted to get into a computer vision role. Now I didn't know that I was going to end up at Amazon Go, and this whole thing would work out with my manager at Uber. But when I was preparing for interviews, I could start preparing. I had some ML companies, some CV companies in Bold Ashley that reached out, but I would have to prepare for that. At that point, I knew I had like 2 months to prepare, and I couldn't do both. I couldn't like do software engineering, which is data structures, algorithms, and at the same time prepare for CV and ML and deep learning interviews. So that preparation is like slightly different, but I had, due to limited time also, I could just, target one. So it's really up to you. If you if you start this process earlier, you can talk to your recruiter, ask them what the process is like, what are the kind of questions, try to find people in that team maybe, and if you can talk to them, like ask them or ask the recruiter that what's the best way to prepare. So most of what I've said is really helpful for like SD interviews at like most of the big companies. Smaller companies, it differs. Like they could have more specific to that role kind of questions. And in that case, you would have to ask them and you would have to prepare differently. But I've never been asked operating systems or any networking questions.
Thanks a lot.
But now if it's Splunk, right? So Splunk has a lot of like streaming and big data. So they could ask you something on those lines. So when I interviewed with Google Life Sciences, which is Verily, they asked me questions that were really like it was in the domain of what they're doing. But in the end, like the approach to solve them was really data structures and algorithms. Like it was like the question, if you look at the question, it's clearly like something relating to what they're doing. And they do that also to like, show you, okay, these are like interesting problems you're working on. But in the end, the approach is you just identify a pattern and say, oh, this is like maybe a tree question. And it's in the end, I have to just find some path or something like that. But yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Does anyone else have any question? I really hope that I haven't scared anyone. Like, I mean, if I did this under tremendous pressure, like the full-time thing, at least internship was still okay. In those 1-2 months that I don't know if it was, yeah, about 1.5 months. And I could do it even under that. So honestly, you're in a much better space than I was. It'll be fine. Like, I think it's just important to practice regularly, and like getting to that is doing that is slightly, I think, hard, but once you does anyone else have any question? I will wait for about 2 minutes, I guess. Okay, when did you start your full-time search? I'm guessing you joined a little late, but there's this, someone actually took my interview when I lost my, so I was at Uber for internship, and then I received a full-time offer to join them. So my entire second year at CU, I did not study and I did not apply to a single company. And then I was graduating in May, and this was 2018. COVID happened, like peaked in March, April. Uber rescinded offers, like all new grad offers. Everyone that was going to join, like in May, June, July, August, whatever, they rescinded all offers, whether it was full time, it was lateral, new grad, anything. So they just resigned it. They just called us one day and said, sorry, but we are in this terrible position now and we don't have any option. And I then had to search for full-time jobs. So I basically started searching for full-time after I graduated, basically in May. But I was in a different position. But please don't do that. Like, the reason I also received a lot of calls was I was like, Uber was one of the few companies to like not to resign offers, and Airbnb did after that. And after that, a lot of companies started doing it. But when Uber did, obviously, a lot of people felt extremely sorry for all those, students, and being international and having limited time. It's like, so I did post on LinkedIn, and I had a lot of people respond to that, and I got a lot of calls through that also. So that's kind of how I did land all my offers. Like, I literally got Bloomberg, Amazon. I reached out to a recruiter who had messaged me a while back, but Bloomberg, Google was all through that. Okay, so how do we need to deal with this pressure? Okay, so I understand that your first sem is just really settling in, and you have so much to do, and for the first time in your life, you have so much on your plate, and it's hard. And I'm honestly telling you, I couldn't prepare in my first semester. I had the most I've ever done ever in that first time. I was like on 5 hours or 6 hours of sleep every day, but so I couldn't prepare, and I didn't want to give an interview without preparing. But that being said, I do think you should apply to companies like now, and then tell them that you want time. So take some time, and because at least now if your target, I think Google had closed their positions pretty early on. I don't know if you joined late, but I said this. So that's why apply, so that at least later you're not thinking, they closed their positions and I didn't apply. But for the most part, all the companies, all the offers I received except AppNexus was in March. So in my second semester. So I did receive all my offers in the second semester, and that's when I got time to prepare. Like in the winter break is when I started preparing properly, because I had more time. My first sem was too hectic. And I was fine. But then my boyfriend did apply the next year, and then he didn't get an internship. And I think it was COVID also. So I think you'll be fine if you apply even in March. Not in March, in Jan, Feb. So apply in like December, November, because most people are busy in November, December. If you're really not prepared and it's too much pressure. But if you ask me, you should apply now and try to schedule your interview for later, so that, okay, they know you're in the process, and say that, you want some time to prepare. You have a lot of courses or whatever. This time, for the most part, they are understanding. So do that, like try to apply early on. And welcome. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, just remember that if you apply today and you get a call tomorrow, you're not necessarily interviewing 2 days from then, but you can easily schedule your interview 1 month from that date, or even 1.5 months. Like that's what I did with my full time. I scheduled all my interviews for 1.5 months almost after I got calls. So, but for internship, honestly, I just said this because like my boyfriend had a different experience where he applied slightly later and he didn't get that many calls. But I applied late. I applied in like December, November, and I had calls. So any other questions? I'm going to wait for maybe 2-3 more minutes. If anyone wants to ask, please feel free to ask. Has anyone here like already gotten into the process for internships or full time? Also, when your friends start getting internship offers, just don't get too stressed about it. Like I'm telling you, in my first time, I had so much and I just couldn't study for internships. And I had a lot of people, getting into getting offers. And I tried my best, not let that affect me. I just told myself, I have way too much. I will deal with this when I have time, which is in the second semester. But yeah, don't let what others get stress you out. Like just focus on what you want to do and do that. And anyway, also remember that most of you are here for internships. Like whatever internship you get is barely going to matter. In the end, what really matters is the full-time offer you get. So, don't like think I have to get the best possible internship. It's good to get, because then if you get a full-time offer there, then it's helpful. But all right. I'm guessing there aren't many more questions left. But if you have any questions, just feel free to, message me on LinkedIn or email. I'm sometimes slow to reply on LinkedIn, so email I generally always check. I guess that's it then. I shall stop sharing. And all the very best to all of you. Okay, I think I should end this then. All right, guys, thank you. Have a nice rest of your day.